I would like to offer a toast at this time.
At the very beginning of 1978, President Carter was the guest of the Shah of Iran.
Because of the great leadership of the Shah, Iran is an island of stability in one of the more troubled areas of the world.
Iran was anything but stable.
Within 7 or 8 days, there were riots already in Iran. There was shouting in the rooftops, Allahu Akbar, God is great, down with the Shah, Margbar Shah. One really could not understand how much Iranian people hated the Shah.
And now they wanted the Ayatollah Khomeini, who had inspired so many of them with taped sermons from his exile in France. A year later, the Shah, whose secret police had spread terror across Iran, was forced to flee the country. Jubilant Iranians welcomed back Khomeini.
It was as if the Messiah had landed in Iran.
The 78-year-old cleric wanted to rid Iran of Western influence. He called the United States the Great Satan. He inspired fervent anti-Americanism in millions of Iranians. The loss of an important ally to an unyielding enemy was just the first blow in a series of misfortunes that confounded Americans in 1979. In September 1978, Jimmy Carter persuaded Anwar Sadat of Egypt and Menachem Begin of Israel to sign a peace treaty that ended 30 years of war. But not even the president's crowning achievement eliminated the fear that his idealistic foreign policy was no match for his enemies. By the end of the year, the Soviets had invaded Afghanistan, and Ayatollah Khomeini had trapped Mr. Carter in the White House. On November the 4th, 1979, word reached Tehran that the Shah had been granted asylum in America.
That morning, I looked out my window. Iranian students had been climbing over the walls of the embassy with photographs of Khomeini on their chest and yelling Margbar America, death to America. They made a beeline straight to my office.
The U.S. Embassy in Tehran has been invaded and occupied by Iranian students. The Americans inside have been taken prisoner.
I was tied up, blindfolded. I started to think about family and started to think about, would I live through the rest of the night?
For quite a while, we didn't know that Barry was a hostage. When I first got the State Department on the phone, they were unsure of exactly what had happened. They weren't sure how many people were being held.
Week after week went by. Finally, at Christmas, the Iranians allowed a visit by American clergy. They let cameras in.
We saw Barry come out, and he had a big smile on his face, and we were kind of sitting there laughing because he was collecting all these oranges, you know, and fruits and whatever he could find. We all felt rather good because he looked good. Good to see you again. Little did we know that they had been kept tied up to chairs 24 hours a day.
The continuing crisis was punctuated with daily displays of hatred orchestrated for the American news media. Unless the Shah was returned to Tehran for trial, Ayatollah Khomeini refused to release the hostages.
At church, people would say a prayer for the hostages. Yellow ribbons was in my house, in my neighbors' yards, and people had yellow ribbons everywhere.
There were thousands of letters coming to the embassy. When I received a letter from Barbara, it was almost a religious experience. I'd take the letter, I'd put it down, face up, and then look at it for a while. It was this little snippet of their life. Read it once, then read it twice. Must have read it 20 or 30 times. But I couldn't get enough of it. One would like the United States to rescue you, either bombing Iran or possibly invading Iran, or the John Wayne syndrome. But I knew that that was absolutely ridiculous.
April the 25th, 1980.
I was sleeping peacefully. The phone rang. I picked it up. It was Pat Caddell, the president's pollster, shouting, "What's going on? What's going on?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. You tell me." And he said, "Turn on the TV."
Late yesterday, I canceled a carefully planned operation which was underway in Iran. Two of our American aircraft collided on the ground.
I just remember being so blown, I mean, so stunned. I mean, just so sick to my stomach. Here we are, the most powerful country in the world, and the images, the helicopters there.
There was no fighting, there was no combat. But to my deep regret, 8 of the crewmen of the 2 aircraft which collided were killed.
To think that 8 other Americans had given their lives, it was totally devastating.
I found an Iranian newspaper, and I translated it to everybody in my cell. We all sat there, glassy-eyed, and we didn't speak to each other, because we knew that other people died for us.
Pride would become an issue in the election year of 1980. President Carter, still trying to negotiate freedom for the hostages, did not leave the White House to campaign. The humiliation of the lingering hostage crisis, combined with a deep recession, amounted to political disaster.
Are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Enter Ronald Reagan, a Hollywood actor and 2-term Republican governor of California.
He was the epitome of America. He was the optimist, the can-do. You know, today is great and tomorrow is going to be better.
I aim to try and tap that great American spirit that survived several wars, survived a Great Depression, and will survive the problems that we face right now.
Ronald Reagan won in a landslide. But President Carter still hoped to free the hostages on his watch, negotiating for their release right through the night of Ronald Reagan's inauguration.
The money is now being transferred into the depository account.
It was an amazing night. And just going hour after hour. And then in the morning when we thought we had the deal, and then the plane didn't leave.
Nothing concerning the airport.
I mean, the president's got to go get dressed, people got to get out of there because the inauguration's going to take place, and the plane is just sitting on the runway. It became clear to us they weren't going to do it.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
Minutes after President Reagan took the oath of office, the hostages were allowed to leave Iran. After 444 days in captivity, they finally came home.
Belief, disbelief, not knowing what to say, just to, no words, just, tears and crying and hugging.
It was a very moving time, yes.
Broadway was so filled with confetti, I could hardly see my way through it all. And both Barbara and I were holding on to each other. It was one of those moments in life where you say, you know, it can't get any better than this.
For millions of people, it seemed that America was back. The euphoria carried over into the next decade, where it joined with a new roaring prosperity that brought riches to more people than any time since the 1920s. And that's the next episode, On the Century, America's Time. I'm Peter Jennings. Thank you for joining us.